Black boy gives his meal to elderly couple, next day a stranger knocks and his life changes forever. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness carry the loudest echoes. A simple choice made in a quiet moment can travel farther than we ever imagine, across days, across lives, across destinies. Today's story is one of those moments. It begins with a hungry boy, an elderly couple, and a meal that was never meant to change the world, yet somehow did. In a time when life feels heavy and opportunities feel scarce, stories like this remind us that character is often revealed not when we have abundance, but when we have almost nothing. This is not just a story about poverty or generosity, it's about courage, dignity, and the invisible threads that connect strangers. It's about how goodness has a way of circling back, sometimes disguised as coincidence, sometimes arriving with a knock on the door. As you listen, place yourself in the boy's shoes. Feel the weight of his hunger. Hear the quiet pride in his choices. And ask yourself what you would do if kindness cost you your last meal. 12-year-old Malik learned early that hunger had a sound. It wasn't always a growl. Sometimes it was the hollow echo in his chest when he ran too fast. Sometimes it was the dull throb behind his eyes during math class. Other times, it was the quiet shame of watching other kids throw away half-eaten lunches while he counted the hours until dinner. If dinner came at all. Malik lived with his mother in a one-room apartment above a closed tailor shop. The stairs creaked like they were tired of carrying people upward, and the windows rattled whenever the evening buses passed. His mother, Renee, worked 2 cleaning jobs and still came home exhausted, her hands cracked from chemicals, her smile worn thin but never gone. Every morning before school, she handed Malik a small brown paper bag. "Don't trade it," she'd say softly. "And eat slow." Inside was always the same thing, a simple meal, sometimes bread and eggs, sometimes rice wrapped in foil, sometimes just a sandwich cut carefully down the middle. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. On this particular afternoon, the sun hung low and orange as Malik walked home from school. His stomach hurt worse than usual. He'd skipped breakfast so his mother could sleep an extra hour after a night shift. By lunchtime, the smell of food in the cafeteria felt almost cruel. So he saved his meal for later. As Malik passed the old bus stop near Jefferson Street, he noticed an elderly couple sitting on the bench. They looked out of place, too still for the rush of the street, too quiet for the noise around them. The man wore a faded brown coat that swallowed his thin frame. The woman's gray hair was tucked neatly under a scarf, her hands folded tight in her lap. They weren't talking. They were just waiting. Malik slowed his steps. He didn't know why he noticed them at first. Maybe it was the way the woman kept glancing down the road, hopeful and worried at the same time. Or the way the man coughed into his sleeve, trying not to be noticed. Or maybe it was the sound, yes, the sound, of hunger Malik recognized all too well. He walked past them. Then stopped. The paper bag in his hand felt heavier than it should have. "You're hungry too," his mind argued. "You need that food." He took another step. Then another. Something pulled him back. Malik turned around and approached the bench slowly, his sneakers scraping the pavement. Excuse me," he said, his voice barely louder than the traffic. The woman looked up first. Her eyes were kind but tired. "Yes, dear." Malik swallowed. Are you waiting for the bus?" The man smiled weakly. "Been waiting a while." Malik hesitated, then held out the paper bag. I have food," he said quickly, before he could change his mind. "You can have it." The couple stared at the bag as if it were something fragile. "Oh no," the woman said softly. "That's yours." Malik shook his head. "I already ate," he lied. "It's okay." The man's eyes filled with something that looked dangerously close to tears. "You sure, son?" he asked. Malik nodded. "Yes, sir." Slowly, the woman reached out and took the bag, her fingers trembling. She opened it just enough to peek inside. The smell of warm food escaped into the air. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know what this means." Malik shrugged, suddenly embarrassed. "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. As he walked away, his stomach twisted painfully, but his chest felt lighter. Like something invisible had shifted into place. That night, Malik went to bed early, hoping sleep would quiet the hunger. His mother noticed the way he pushed his dinner around the plate but said nothing. She had learned not to ask questions that came with answers she couldn't fix. The next morning came too fast. Malik woke to the sound of knocking. Not the usual soft knock of a neighbor or the quick tap of the landlord. This knock was firm. Deliberate. Important. Renee opened the door cautiously. A man in a dark suit stood in the hallway. He was tall, well-groomed, and carried himself with a calm confidence that didn't belong in their building. In his hand was a leather folder. "Good morning," the man said politely. "Is Malik Johnson here?" Renee stiffened. "Who's asking?" "My name is Mr. Carter," he replied. "I'm here regarding an act of kindness your son showed yesterday." Malik froze. His heart pounded as memories of the bus stop flooded back. "Did I do something wrong?" Renee looked from the man to Malik, confusion etched across her face. "Malik?" she asked. "What is this about?" Mr. Carter smiled gently. "May I come in? I promise this isn't bad news." Reluctantly, Renee stepped aside. The apartment suddenly felt smaller. "Mr. Carter looked around briefly, not with judgment, but with awareness, before turning his attention back to Malik. "Yesterday afternoon," he said, "you gave your meal to an elderly couple at a bus stop. Do you remember them?" Malik nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. They are Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore," Mr. Carter continued. "And they asked me to find you." Renee's hand flew to her mouth. "Why?" she whispered. Mr. Carter closed the folder, his expression serious now. "Because what your son did reminded them of something they had almost forgotten," he said. "And because they believe that kindness like that should never go unnoticed." Malik's mind raced. He hadn't expected thanks. He hadn't expected anything at all. "I didn't do it for," Malik began. "I know," Mr. Carter interrupted gently. "That's why this matters." He reached into the folder and pulled out an envelope. "This," he said, holding it carefully, "is only the beginning." Malik stared at the envelope, his hands shaking. Renee stepped closer to her son, protective and uncertain. "What does this mean?" she asked. Mr. Carter met her eyes. "It means," he said slowly, "that yesterday's choice is about to change Malik's life in ways none of us expected." The room fell silent. Malik's heart beat louder than the knocking had. And somewhere deep inside him, the sound of hunger faded, replaced by something new. Hope. Malik stared at the envelope as if it might disappear if he blinked too hard. It was thick, cream-colored, and sealed with a small gold emblem he didn't recognize. His name was written neatly on the front. "Go on," Mr. Carter said gently. "You can open it." Malik looked at his mother. Renee's eyes were wide, a mix of fear and cautious hope. She nodded. With trembling fingers, Malik slid a thumb under the seal and pulled out a single sheet of paper. As he read, his lips parted slightly. At first, the words didn't make sense. Then they did. "It says," Malik began, his voice cracking, "it says there's a scholarship. A full one. For school. And a monthly stipend." Renee gasped. Mr. Carter nodded. "The Whitmores established an education trust many years ago. They never had children of their own. They were waiting for the right moment, and the right person, to pass it on. But I'm just a kid," Malik said. I just gave them my lunch. Mrs. Whitmore's voice echoed in his memory, you don't know what this means. Apparently, they did. There's more, Mr. Carter added. The stipend is enough to cover food, utilities, and basic expenses. Not charity, an investment. In Malik. Renee sank into the nearest chair, tears streaming freely now. You don't understand, she said softly. I've been praying. Every night. Just for a little help. Mr. Carter smiled kindly. Sometimes prayers are answered through people who don't even know they're answering them. That afternoon, Malik returned to school with a strange feeling in his chest. Nothing about the hallways had changed, yet everything felt different. He sat up straighter in class. He raised his hand more. He listened, not just to the lessons, but to the quiet possibility humming beneath the surface of his life. Word spread faster than he expected. By the end of the week, his teacher pulled him aside. I heard about what you did, she said. Not the scholarship. The lunch. Malik shrugged, suddenly shy again. It wasn't a big deal. She smiled. It was. Don't ever forget that. A month later, Malik and his mother were invited to the Whitmore's home. It was a modest house in a quiet neighborhood, filled with sunlight and the smell of books. Mrs. Whitmore hugged Malik the moment she saw him. You look taller already, she said warmly. Mr. Whitmore chuckled. Or maybe hope does that to a young man. They sat together at the dining table, sharing a meal far bigger than the one Malik had given away. But this time, no one was hungry. We didn't choose you because you were poor, Mrs. Whitmore said gently. We chose you because you were kind when you couldn't afford to be. Mr. Whitmore leaned forward. Promise us something, Malik. Yes, sir. Promise you'll pass it on. However you can. Whenever you can. Malik nodded, his throat tight. I promise. Years passed. Malik grew. The scholarship opened doors, better schools, mentors, opportunities his younger self had never dared imagine. But what never changed was the memory of the bus stop, the paper bag, and the choice that started it all. He volunteered at shelters. Tutored younger kids. Sometimes, he bought meals for strangers and left before they could say thank you. Because he understood now. Kindness didn't need applause. It needed action. On a warm afternoon many years later, Malik stood outside a community center with a familiar envelope in his hand. Inside was an acceptance letter, this time for a young boy who reminded him of himself. The boy looked up at Malik with wide eyes. Why are you helping me? The boy asked. Malik smiled. Because once, he said, someone was hungry, and I shared what little I had. The sound of hunger, Malik had learned, could be quiet. But the sound of kindness? It echoed forever. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you of the power of small acts, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Your support helps us bring more meaningful stories like this to life.